Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am pleased to welcome my guest, Phil Whitebloom. And let me tell you about Phil. Phil is a seasoned sales expert and dynamic leader with over 40 years of experience in sales, sales management, and executive leadership. His illustrious career began immediately after college and includes notable highlights such as his 23-year tenure at Sony, where he rose from a salesperson to vice president of sales for government, corporate, and education sectors. Phil's outstanding performance at Sony earned him the prestigious Samurai Award, twice the company's highest honor. So today we're going to talk about something Phil knows a lot about, and that is the art of handling objections and closing sales. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Phil Whitebloom.
Thank you, Vicki. Such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invitation.
My pleasure. And, as I said before we started, this is a subject that most entrepreneurs, myself very much included, could have a seminar on every single day and still may struggle because there's just something about it. Although I'm learning that if I just make it a conversation and not think of it as a sale, it's much, much easier. But we're going to have you, the expert, talk to us in a moment. First, we're going to ask two simple, easy questions. The first is, tell the audience where you live. Where do you call home?
Okay, so I currently live and have lived here for a long time. In fact, this is my 30th anniversary in this home. But I live in Elkridge, Maryland, which is Baltimore, Washington, D.C. corridor.
Nice.
And I'm originally from Chicago, in the Midwest.
You do have still the Chicago accent.
Yes, my children tell me about that.
It's a nice accent, so very nice. All right, and then we briefly shared all of your accolades, especially at Sony, but you're not at Sony now, and you are doing something different. So what was the journey that really led you, informed you, drove you to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, thank you. So I won't go through the whole long detail because this will
That's
be
a new
a
podcast
novel and not a podcast. But but I've been in sales. I got my first job out of college was in sales, and I never left the field.
Mm-hmm.
I've done other things throughout, but sales was always part of it. And when you mentioned Sony, that wasn't my first job out of college either. But I did when I joined there. I joined in the office products division and moved into the government division. And not too many years down the road from there, I got my first real people management job in managing that sales team. And it just went on from there where I got other responsibilities and ended up for a number of years there being vice president of sales for the groups that you mentioned. And I actually retired from there in 2009. But I was too young to retire. So it was a voluntary retirement on my part. I ended up, even before I was done, going to work for one of my customers for 6 years and as vice president for them for sales and marketing, and a couple more groups along the way. So during this entire period, I worked with so many applications and so many different types of customers in so many different areas, which is where and learned so much and helped in so many different areas is where the name Been There came from, for Been There Consulting Services.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, so
You have the t-shirt?
I have the been there consulting services one. And and what happened is during COVID, I decided I was just going to retire. And now I'm retired, I have some grandchildren, and I started been there consulting services really as something to give me something to do to keep on helping others in this field.
Yeah.
And as a result, though, it turned into a business, and I realized, oh, I have clients, and now I have to get some infrastructure around this business if I'm going to do this for real. And it's been a very rapid um, expansion and learning experience, and becoming an entrepreneur at 65 has been great.
Yeah.
After being in the corporate world for so long, and
Yeah.
it's been wonderful.
I know what you're talking about. So, yeah, I'm 66, retired, and so, but I at 60 decided I was wanting to spend time with my grandkids. So I retired then, and 2 years did that, had fun, and then it was like, okay, Vicki, what are you going to do now?
Right.
Because this is you have things that you've learned that you should share.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
it's interesting. I'm exactly the same age as you are now as of this
yeah.
recording, and yeah, for a few months I wasn't doing anything, but there was that lack of fulfillment
Mhm.
and purpose, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
So it just kind of took on a life of its own, and
yeah.
it's really gone very well.
One of the things, as you were talking about your journey in the past that you took, oftentimes, and especially I think why I coach on leadership is because you have somebody that's great in sales. We're great in something, and then they get promoted to a manager, vice president, or whatever. And that now is not operational, it's more strategic, it's more people oriented. And they didn't get trained in that. They didn't, they didn't, get the tools to be successful. And so you may stay at it and just be bad, and then your team leaves. So what was your experience like? Because obviously you rose to that level, and then you went to another company and took that level. So to me, you must have been successful at it. But what was it like to transition from being operational and going after the sales to being the manager, the boss, the VP?
So some people are born to do certain things, and even if you don't realize it at the time, and I had been in leadership roles going all the way back into college, for sure, in the student activities organizations. And I had these responsibilities, and they were real responsibilities. We had large budgets. We had 80 members in our group.
Wow.
And so that carried through. So I was always being put into some kind of leadership role wherever I was, even in the first job I had right out of college. And at 23 years old, I was made a supervisor over somebody else. But I didn't really realize that path. And even though people talk about me as a salesperson, which I wear that badge very proudly, the reality is I've been a sales leader for 30
Yeah.
years. I've also been leaders in the community service area too, in those organizations, heading those organizations and heading groups within those organizations. So, and still continue to do these kind of things today. So that is really the natural part for me, but it's been always around the sales area. I've run marketing. I'm not a marketer. I don't claim to be one. I won't play one on your podcast. But it's been running these different groups, but I always stayed in the field. So I resisted going to headquarters locations intentionally.
Yeah.
And you get bogged down in all the politics and everything else like that. And I wasn't politically driven in that way. So it was, if you were kind of to relate it to the military, I was always a field general. You do need the rear admirals, and you need the people back in, at the Pentagon. But I was the one in the field out there with the troops. So I was in front of customers as often as possible, and working with the salespeople that worked for me, wherever that was, and around North America or even in Latin America. So
Very
That's
good.
yeah.
I could tell from just the way you have progressed and things that I've read about you, that you were a leader that could sell, as opposed to a salesperson that was trying to lead. And
That's
that's,
probably a good way to put it, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So what makes your coaching different? Because there's a lot of people that coach on sales and handling objections and all those things that we're going to talk about. But as I was going through your site, that I realized that there is a difference. So share with just briefly what makes your coaching different than maybe they get somewhere else.
Right, and that's my favorite question. And people who I work with, it's their favorite answer is because. So I always tell everybody that sales training is really important, and they should get it. I don't claim to be a sales trainer as a business, and so sales training is linear. You start at the beginning of the process to getting connected, making those initial introductions, everything else. Dale Carnegie calls it the attention step, and you go all the way through his 5 steps: attention, interest, conviction, desire, and close. And but people are in business now, and they need results now. And usually when I'm getting called in, it's because there's some challenge or there's a problem.
Right.
And I go from one extreme to the other in this with my clients. So by working with them now, my promise, and it's in writing, is that after every single meeting, and I want to live up to that in your podcast today too, for all the listeners, is that you will have something that you could implement in your business and maybe even in your personal life right away, as soon as we're done, that will give you positive results that you could take forward. So in coaching, I work with people and businesses where they are right now. So that initial discovery interview is really the most critical thing. And then everything else follows behind it, which is exactly why I haven't created a curriculum, because you can't, if you're going to do something customized, it has to be truly customized.
Yeah.
So training comes with the coaching, but very rare. I'm saying yes, I said that right. The training comes with the coaching, but very rarely does coaching come with training.
Yeah.
And so,
well, you probably have like hundreds of courses that you could do once I've worked with this group of people, this specialized, and 90% of this is the same. And these are the things that you could do. But as you are working with those people, you're learning more about it. And so your course then becomes somewhat customized as you will.
And that's what's going to happen. So the book's coming out. Yeah, the book will be out on September 9th of 2024 of this year.
Perfect. So it's just right when this is going to go
done.
up.
I mean, it's just getting through. It's just it's waiting for the exact right date to launch it, and that's what's happening. And
Nice.
and then there will be a course that will follow that.
Awesome. When you get that course launched, you come back and we'll talk about it.
Love to.
All right. So now I want to know as you get to know your clients and you have those open-ended, active listening kind of questions that come out to peel the onion and make you more aware of what they need. What are some things that you typically see sort of often, maybe not every time, but sort of often, that maybe the audience out there is having this situation too, that might help them in handling objections and really getting to that point of close? And maybe talk about the time management of that, because I think people too think that the first time they meet the person, if they don't close the sale, then they failed. So kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a whole series of Vicki podcasts we could do just on this together.
I know. We're going to be talking more. I know.
There is an answer to your question, and the answer is, at the highest level, is that most of the time I hear, I am not a good closer, or if it's an owner or an executive, they say, my people are not good closers. That is so common.
Mhm.
I would say 80% of the time, this is what I hear. And what I will say to this from experience is it's not that they're bad closers, is that they're not ready to close when they close. In other words, there's a lot that needs to be done up front. So sometimes they never get to the point of closing.
Mm.
So there's nothing to close. They never got there. And you hear about, how many salespeople don't ask for the order. Well, there's some truth to that, but the reality is, and why is that? And what I've learned from experience and from working with so many others, and especially in doing this now, is that they haven't got the prospect. We'll just call the person who's not a customer or client yet the prospect. They
Mhm.
have not gotten the prospect to the point where the prospect is ready to be closed. And if you're
Yeah.
doing this right, the close becomes very easy. And I have to tell you that just my past 3 clients, I never asked them for the order. I just kind of looked at them at the end and they said, "What's up?" And one person actually said, "What?" And I said, "Well, I want to know what the next step is." They said, "Well, that's what we want to know." I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I want to know when we get started." Right? And this is real. And this is if you're doing everything right, and it's a skill. It's
Mhm.
not a trick. There's no magic, and there's no sleight of hand. It's really about asking questions. And it's
Mhm.
always about being curious and getting down. I'm sure you have other people that you talk with all the time that would talk about the why. And the
Yeah.
why is really important, and the why behind the why, and the why behind that why, until you get to the
Mhm.
ultimate one.
Yeah.
And then that's what you're selling to. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example if I can just tell you a short story.
Sure.
I was working with somebody. She was in IT, and I'm talking to her. We're having an interview whether we could work with her or not. And her boss would have to be the one that would hire me. But we're having this conversation, and I found out that she had children, and she needed to bring home money for that, and then she needed to make her numbers, and she did that. But when it came all down to it, is that there was something that she wanted to own. Just call it a farm. This is what she really wants. So it was no longer helping her to make her numbers so she can
Yeah.
feed her family. I mean, that's what everybody has to do and needs to do. But what is it you really want? So I was no longer working with her on helping her to make her number. I
It's
was
getting the
helping with her
farm.
to get her farm.
Yeah.
And currently I'm also working with somebody else on the same thing. And this is what makes the difference, is because I wasn't trying to coach her to be a more successful salesperson in selling her computer services. I was helping her to be successful in that so she could get the money, so she could do the other things, so she could find the right people and connect with the right people so she could get her farm.
Mhm.
And and this is what the differentiation is in the coaching. In the training, they very rarely get to that level. They get to how to ask for the order, but they don't drill into finding out. They talk about dominant buying motive, but the dominant buying motive is really even beyond where it's taught. And this makes such a huge difference. And then handling objections, recognizing objections, handling them correctly, acknowledging them. And there's a lot into that. And as I said, it was enough to put a whole book together. So
Wow. So then what are we getting wrong when we handle objections? And that's obviously causing us to not close our sales, but just, what are we doing wrong, or what are we doing that over and over that we think's right, but it's not working?
what gets done wrong more than anything else is that the objection is handled like it's a question and it's answered. So it's getting answered. And so there's many times when you're not answering. In fact, the majority of the time, a lot of cases, unless it's so just clear cut that it can't be anything except what was said,
Mm-hmm.
but there's usually something behind it. So if the objection, let's just take the most common objection, cost too much.
Yeah.
Right? So how often do you hear that? So,
Mm-hmm.
well, does it really? I mean, what is it compared to? So people will then, some people panic. I had one person I was doing some work for, and he would constantly cut his price. He got to the point where somebody would say, how much does it cost? He'd say, it's $1,000, but I'll give it to you for 900 before the person even said anything. So
Yeah.
he already gave away $100 where he didn't have to. And it drives me crazy. But when somebody says that, like it costs too much, you have to acknowledge it. You can't ignore it. So you acknowledge, you say, I hear you. You said, you say right back, exactly, it costs too much. Or you could say that there's something about the price that you feel is too high or out of line. And then by doing that, one is you're showing respect. That
Right.
you heard it and you're repeating it back. So they heard you say it back. And that way you could also confirm that you've heard it correctly. And then you say, could you tell me more? What does that mean compared to what? So they're going to be kind of like, people get a little bit surprised on that objection. Why would you say that? Well, is it because you're comparing it to something that you bought from us 10 years ago? Or 5 years ago? Or is there a competitor in a room that's offering a like product or service for less money? Or is it your budget not, these are the things. The thing is not to help. So, and that's the other thing that people do when they ask a question, then they give them an example. And when you're giving them an example, you're putting words in their mouth, and that may not be what's on their mind, because they'll say, yeah, or no, or something like that when you're giving. So you don't say, is it because of you're talking to somebody else, or is it because of this? You just say, compared to what? What is too high? Why is it too high? And then I tell people, shut up. And after asking questions, I always say that once again, when in my coaching,
Yeah,
I
I know.
tell the client, I don't tell the prospect or the client to shut up. I when the coaching, because I said always, and anybody who's listening to this that knows me, they've heard this already. And in fact, I had somebody tell me the other day they had Phil on their shoulder saying, shut up.
Shut up.
Because people get excited and they want to jump in. The first thing that they hear, that they say, oh, I got a solution for it, or they want to contradict it, or whatever it is. But when you do that because you need to give them a chance to answer, and you need to give them a chance to answer completely. Right.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's really good. Just like you're doing right now. You ask me a question and you wait for me to take a pause, and then you come back in, and this is the right thing to do, because then you find out what's going on behind that. And many times, and then you take it from there. But that's the first step. So the first thing that happens is people respond exactly to that.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. There's a direct answer to your question. The next part of this is it truly the objection?
Yeah.
So there's red herrings, they're called, and it's a distraction. It's just an easy thing to do. It's to give something that's an easy, let's call it an easy blow off. They don't want to talk about it, and then you need to flush that out. And another thing, there's a whole lot of them, but I'll stop after this next one and take a breath for a second. And then this next part is, yes, that may be an objection, but how important is that objection? And I was just recently involved in something this morning where they thought they were completely out of it, but this objection was an objection, but it was out of 100%, it was maybe 1%. It was just something that they didn't like or didn't approve of, but they were still 99% all in. And this person almost walked away from the business because the customer, the prospect, said, I want to buy it, literally.
Wow.
They thought they were out, but it was just one thing.
Wow. I know in some of the dealings that I've had with other folks, when you say no and they ask that why and different things, and I've had them say, well, if you don't get this, and I want you to be successful, what will you do? And a lot of times it's like, oh, jeez, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it that way. And that goes back to your why of what you're doing in your business. And like,
Right.
if it's to get better at sales,
Right. And
the coaching.
And that's a good question. And by the way, while we're having this discussion, you haven't heard me ask one yes or no question.
Yeah.
And we always talk about open-ended questions, but instead of just talking about it in a mechanical way, for everybody to understand why this is so important, it gives somebody information. For example, if I was to ask you, Vicki, what do you like about what I've shared with you? Or if I was to ask you, do you like what I was shared with you? And you say yes, that's
Then you're
nice.
done.
But what does that tell me? It doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
So when you say, if I ask you, Vicki, what did you like best about what we've talked about so far?
Mm-hmm.
And
then I would say all of the tips that you've shared with me and the very good stories that I can relate to and see myself in. Excellent advice so far.
right. And what's important, what just happened is you heard yourself say it. So
Mm-hmm.
by you hearing yourself say, you're going to remember that. And you're going to remember and you're going to feel good about it. And especially if people are in a competitive situation, that you will remember that you like this because you said it out loud with your own words. And you're trying to weigh things out over whatever period of that time was, whether it was just one full day or whether it was over months or years.
Mm-hmm.
You will remember the things that you say out loud. And so that's why it's important. And going back into the objections, you have to make sure you handle them correctly. And that you've actually answered it. So there are a couple other steps beyond this now.
So when you do coaching, in business as a manager, a lot of times to help my project managers under me, we'd role play things. And in my coaching now, and for both leadership and public speaking, I do some role playing too. So in sales, does that help you at all?
Role playing is important. And the way, and it's important because, people, this is one of my favorite lines. They say, oh yeah, Phil, I know I said that to you, but I would never say this to a customer or a prospect. And I say, well, if you said it to me, the only thing I had to go on is that you will say it to somebody else, or you have said it, or you're going to say it. So I have to address that because as a coach, there's a benefit of being a coach is I don't have to be diplomatic. Because that won't be helpful, but I have to be respectful of you. But so if you said it to me, I can only believe that you'll say it to somebody else. And so role playing is important. The role play, though, what I like to do is have them just talk to me and how they're going to do something. Or I'll reverse roles and say, you are me and I am you, and let's go have the discussion. Let's go, whether it's an introductory meeting and a networking meeting or wherever it is or whatever, or we're doing this thing here, let's just switch and go at it. So it's powerful because you're working with what they do and we're working with what's in the moment and it resonates. And the most important thing is that it sticks.
Yeah. They're going to remember it. They're definitely going to remember it. A lot of the things that you shared today are a lot of the tips that I give for people to be more impactful speakers and engaging speakers. Because you do want to be remembered. You want the person to walk away and remember what you said, and it is how you say it that's going to make it be remembered.
Right. And I'm happy you said that because what you're talking about, the skill, what you're saying is the skills translate into other areas.
Yeah,
it's not. Everybody's a salesperson, whether they want to admit it.
That's exactly right.
And so when you're speaking for a reason. If you're public speaking or whatever it is in what you do, was there one thing that particularly caught your attention, Vicki, that you felt would be really powerful for your public speakers?
Oh my gosh. First of all, the active listening. The second of all is that how you respond to them is respectful and makes them feel heard. So very empathetic and EQ going on there. So again, I agree with you completely. And that's why I say to folks that if you stop thinking of it as a sales and it's just a conversation that you're having to get to know that person well enough to see if what you have, service or product, is what they need. And if you don't have it, can you give them someone else's name?
Right. Right, exactly. We're saying the same thing in that. Yeah, one thing I'd like to do is, when you introduce me and you introduce the name of the book, Handling Objections, Clues for Closing the Sale. The reason for that is because if somebody has an objection, and let's say it's a legitimate, real objection, you need to stop and the objection is important. Why is it? Why would they stop and why would they create this objection? Why would they object to something that they totally just don't care about? They're not interested in,
Mhm.
right? Why would they call attention to that in that way, other than saying, I have no need for that? Okay, so take that one off the table, because that could be addressed also to find out if it is or isn't.
Mhm.
But that would almost be shame on the salesperson if they were presenting something that
Yeah.
wasn't in the discovery information during your questions, and then because it's already on your PowerPoint presentation or it's a button on your product and you have to show it because it's there. That's the best way to talk yourself right out of the room.
Yeah.
So, but let's say this is a legitimate one. If they raise an objection, you should stop, because it's a clue to what's going to be the differentiator on what why they want your product or service. Why are you in the room? They could say whatever it is they say, and this is something you can stop and say, wow, I hear you. Why is that? Why is this important to you? And you ask these questions just like this,
Mhm.
and they will engage.
Yeah.
And that could be your entitled, in some cases, it could be the entire difference between you getting an order and not getting the order. And you may be able to stop by checking with the trial close, and say, is this person ready to be closed now?
Wow.
Because if they are, you need to stop selling and stop talking and ask for the order. Or you're just going to find out if it's something that's really important to them, even though there's other things that are important that still need to be covered. But you check this box because they've objected to it, and you didn't know about this until they objected to it.
Yeah.
So it's completely powerful. It's like, don't miss this sign. It's a big neon light that most people don't see.
Well, time has flown by. And so I'm going to have you come back, because I wanted to go over busting sales myths. So we could probably do a whole podcast on that one anyway.
Yeah.
You've got 10 things out on your website and your blog about that. So definitely have you back up for that.
Thank you.
But for those that have enjoyed this conversation and think, oh my gosh, I really like what he's saying, I need to get with him, I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you will all just, if you're listening, you should grab a paper and pencil real quick, as we're going to give these contact information. If you're watching, yay for you, you can go ahead and grab this screenshot. So the website is Been There CS, like Charlie Sam, BeenThereCS.com. And I'm going to turn it over to Phil to talk to you about the things that he has on that website that might help you, resources. And again, he's got great blogs out there, so definitely check those out. So go ahead, it's all yours.
Thank you. So on there, the website is kind of a living website. It gets updated with new services and everything that we're working on, plus the blogs. And there's different programs for everybody. But the goal is really to be able to help as many people as possible. So I have different plans and different programs to help people. Everything from group coaching to one-to-ones and masterminds. So, and then also on there's the contact us pages, which is the best way to get a hold of me. Just drop it in there and it comes right into my email box and I'll see it. I respond pretty quickly. And so that's the best way to find out what's going on in the short term. In the blogs, I post a new one every week. And it's not a newsletter where I'm talking about myself. It's really trying to give some stories and some lessons and everything else in there.
Fantastic. Well, Phil, you definitely have to come back. We'll make a part 2 for this. So definitely chat some more about those busting the sales myths. I think that's going to be a fun one to talk about. And thanks for being such a great guest, sharing all of your insights and really practical advice for the folks that are out there that, everybody does have to sell. You sell yourself, you sell your business, you sell your products, but people buy you. They don't, they first want to know and trust you. And so your advice of listening to them to see how you can help them, I think is just brilliant. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being such a good interviewer and for your kind words. And I'm excited to come back.
Awesome. And as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.